A sight like no other has unfolded at border points by Delhi in India, where tens of thousands of farmers are peacefully protesting against 3 farming reform bills. These bills were passed into law by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling party in September. Farmers say the bills will leave them vulnerable to corporations and will devastate their livelihoods.
The political side is that this government has been very autocratic in the way in which it has pushed through big reforms. And I should say that on the agricultural side, these reforms that they put through in September, there were a lot of economists and others who thought that there had to be some reforms in the agricultural system. Whether these were designed properly or not is a question.
60% of India's population works in the agriculture sector, but only represents about 15% of India's GDP, with the majority being small-scale farmers. Most protesters are from the states of Punjab and Haryana, which are considered India's breadbasket, but farmers from across the country have joined the protests. However, the demonstrations turned violent when the government used military tactics to clamp down on the dissent it was receiving from the frustrated farmers. Protesters have been met with water cannons along with tear gas, concrete barricades, and some were even beaten with batons. Despite the agitation from the government, farmers remain strong in their resolve to see the bills repealed.
बेशक लगातार पवे 6 महीने रहना पवे ये संगत उठ के जाने वाली नहीं।
इंटरनेशनली ये चीज़ साबित हो चुकी है, जो इंडियन कारपोरेट्स हैं वो आप बहुत ज़्यादा अमीर हो रहे हैं, लेकिन जो मध्यम वर्ग है या फिर गरीब वर्ग है और ज़्यादा गरीबी में जा रहा है।
हम किसान बन के आए हैं, खालसा हुंदे होए, हमारा इसमें हमारा कोई और रोल नहीं, सिर्फ किसानी का मुद्दा है।
The bills allow farmers to sell their produce outside government-controlled agricultural markets called mandis, which ensured prices wouldn't get too high. They also curtail farmers' ability to challenge contract disputes in court. The bills mark an end to a decades-old system guaranteeing minimum support prices for staple crops called an MSP.
With the entry of the corporate, private players into this agriculture procurement and also agricultural production, what do they see is that they will have complete control over what people produce and how much they will pay back to the producers.
An additional concern is that these bills were passed without stakeholders being consulted or deliberation from the opposition.
What has really agitated a lot of opposition in India is precisely the fact that the government rammed through these bills, momentous bills, in the field of agriculture, essentially liberalizing agriculture without any deliberation in Parliament. The opposition requested that these bills go to parliamentary committee for further scrutiny. The government disallowed it.
But crisis in the agriculture sector in India is nothing new, as the industry has been suffering for decades. Things changed significantly in the 1960s when India went through the Green Revolution under then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, who implemented the growth of high-yielding wheat and rice crops to address famine in the country. The revolution marked the beginning of industrializing the agriculture sector and introducing new methods of fertilization and the use of pesticides, and some farmers were affected negatively.
One line of critique was that it led to growing inequalities and disparity in the Indian countryside between sort of richer farmers with large landholding assets and then medium and small-sized farmers, and a vast surplus of agricultural labor.
Fast forward to the 1990s when corporate genetically modified seeds were introduced to increase even higher yields. Farmers took huge loans to pay for irrigation, fertilization, and pesticides. But in instances where they saw no return on their investments, they died by suicide in large numbers when they felt trapped in a cycle of debt. More than 300,000 farmers have taken their own lives in India over the last 2 decades.
Farmer in historical sense symbolized lot of dignity and self-respect. What these reforms are doing and what actually the 1990s this agriculture crisis have done by putting them into unaffordable debts, they not getting the price they are investing in agriculture. What they did is that this system has robbed their dignity.
Now these protests may just be the farmers' way of saying enough is enough and represent a fight towards reclaiming their long-forgotten dignity. Taz Dhaliwal, Global News.